interactions with her as well as her classmates and colleagues have always been very motivational, very inspirational, very inspiring. And a few weeks ago, we did a program together in the community where we talked about a demographic and a segment of our community that is very frequently, very often ignored, overlooked, and the kind of things that she shared about the details, the circumstances of our fellow Muslim sisters they're Muslim, they are incarcerated, the way that they operationalize their faith, the way that they spend their Ramadan, the kind of challenges that they have are things that we wouldn't even think about had we not had a presentation like this. It profoundly affected me to the point where I hope and pray that I can make good in my intention of being a lifelong advocate for this particular cause. Because some of the stories that she shared, and you all will see with the presentation, the pictures, the anecdotes, they're very, very, very powerful. They're very powerful. And so without further delay, I don't want to take up more of her time. I feel like I've already done that. So thank you all for coming. I know events in Ramadan are kind of tricky. People are knocked out throughout the day and they respawn at iftar time. But I hope that after this presentation, regardless of who decided to come here today or didn't come here today, the few people that are here, you can make a huge difference, and we'll talk more about it towards the end of the talk, like what you can do as individuals to help kind of further the cause. But I can tell you the first time we did this program together, I made the intention, I will invite her to Nueces to come talk about this as soon as possible. And so we couldn't even wait after Ramadan. We decided to do it right now. And I hope and pray that this presentation will similarly motivate and inspire you to become advocates for this cause, because it's very, very important. So without further delay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Anwar.
I personally have a hard stop at 5:30. I have to go teach a class at that time.
Yes.
If I kind of duck out at that time, please forgive me.
No.
But typically the way this goes is she'll present a really powerful kind of set of slides and pictures. And hopefully if I'm still around, we can have a conversation about kind of her personal advocacy and do a deeper dive into some of her stories and anecdotes. And the second part of the program, which is really exciting, is actually making care packages for these inmates and for these members of our community. So that's the run of show for this evening. And like I said, turn it over to you officially one more time.
Thank you, Ms. Anwar. I feel so honored to be here with you guys. This is something that I'm super passionate about. I love it. And I get a lot of questions quite often about why we do this work, especially in terms of this common theme if you do criminal defense work or any sort of work within the carceral system is but they were found guilty. These are people who have gone through trial or they pleaded. They're not in jail. So jail is when you're waiting for trial. Prisons for when you went through trial already and you are now serving a sentence. So that means that everybody in prison is, in the eyes of the law, quote unquote, guilty. And people quite often kind of wonder, why should we help these people in any way? And I think that there are quite a few responses to that. And the first is that the legal system is not as equal as we think it is. People are forced to plead guilty almost every single hour of the day. They're forced to plead guilty because they can't afford an attorney, even though one is provided to them. That attorney has so many cases that they're just told that it's better for you to plead guilty. You'll miss less time at work. You won't lose your kids, whatever the situation may be. Another reason is that these are still people. They still deserve the most basic of needs. And many of them are people who have made mistakes or have had really, really hard lives. I like to always think about it we are quite honestly all very, very close to experiencing what these people are experiencing. In America, all it takes is one hospital visit and you're homeless. I mean, quite literally, from my interactions with people that are unhoused or are in prison, we hear stories like that all the time where they were doing completely well. I mean, I had a client who was a chiropractor bringing in 6 figures every single year, $1 million house, and his insurance stopped covering his psychiatric meds. His schizophrenia got really, really bad. He lost everything, and now he's unhoused and in and out of jail. So these people still deserve our love and our attention, because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to abandon them, and so who are we to abandon them? So a little bit about religious practice. Like Mufti Anwar said, I am a law student. I'm in my final semester of law school, alhamdulillah. And I actually will be doing this work post-grad. I will be a fellow at the Muslim Legal Fund of America doing religious practice and religious liberty work for them. And religious practice within state-sponsored institutions are protected by 3 main pieces of law. The First Amendment, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. They protect both state, local, federal facilities. So, like, for example, UT, if they automatically told you you're not allowed to pray anymore on campus, that would be a First Amendment violation, and also a Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act violation, and you would be able to sue them. This does remind me, nothing in this presentation is legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. If you have a legal question, you should consult a lawyer. I'm not letting the State Bar come after me. So although it's supposed to be protected by law, it's not guaranteed. A lot of your religious practice while you're incarcerated is dependent upon the staff. And even if they were to allow you to practice your religion, sometimes the basic tenets of your religion are not available to you. Things like privacy, things like lack of cleanliness, these things are things that you are not guaranteed in prison. And just going back to why I said it's dependent on the staff, if you, for example, during Ramadan need to break your fast, but meal time's at 6 o'clock and iftar time's at 6:30, it is dependent upon these individual actors whether or not you will get to eat that night. You are not allowed to take food back to your cell. You are not allowed to save the food. You're not allowed to request that you can just eat later. These things are all dependent on what those individual people want to do for you. So I always kind of pose this question about what is needed for prayer. We need a clean surface to put our head on. We need some sort of solitude or quiet. And I put a question mark after that because it's not a requirement, but it's something that we all sort of seek when we're praying. I think we all kind of want privacy. We don't want to be observed while we're praying. It feels very awkward. And we need to be able to do wudu. And for the women, we need a hijab. But none of this is guaranteed in prison. You can very easily have 0 of these things, but you are still, under the law, considered to have you're still allowed to practice your religion. So this is what a basic cell looks like. Has anybody ever visited a prison before? Done a walkthrough, a jail? Yeah. So this is a typical prison cell. As you can see, you have your bathrooms connected to your room, and you usually have a roommate or a bunkmate, and you are kind of confined to this living arrangement. And as you can see, it's small. So if you have 2 people in here, it's kind of a game of Tetris to see who's going to be standing while one person's sitting. How are you going to pray? You're not guaranteed a prayer mat. So your question is, how am I going to pray? And I think something that we're asked a lot if you speak to people that are incarcerated is, can I pray in my cell if the bathroom is still there? Because we can't pray in a bathroom. So what do you do if your bathroom is your room? It's a question that we would never ever think about asking in our day-to-day lives, but it's something that they have to deal with every single day. Here are some examples of people praying in prison. On this bottom picture, you can see this is a prison chapel. You can see that they do have a It looks like it's a towel or a bed sheet and a small little jainamaz or prayer mat. But this is very rare. If I were to guess, let's see, that's LA County Jail. So that's on the West Coast, a little bit more liberal, a little bit more hippie. But up here we see two men praying. One is shirtless, and that is because the man behind him is using his shirt as a prayer mat. This is more common. Even then, many jails and prisons do not let one incarcerated individual lead prayer for another incarcerated individual. So there's very rarely group prayer. And that is because they're afraid of some sort of like hierarchy forming. But in my opinion, it's just an excuse to limit religious observance. If you're in solitary confinement, this is your living arrangement. So you don't have a cellmate, you're in even smaller quarters, and you don't have a window to the outside. You usually don't have any of your materials with you. So let's say that you have a Quran in your room. You don't get a Quran in solitary confinement. Let's say you've got they get tablets now in prison, and you'll have sometimes they'll allow a PDF to be downloaded with the prayer times. You won't have that in solitary confinement. You don't have a window. You have no idea what time it is. It's awful. This is death row. We do have quite a few Muslims on death row. The conditions on death row are not great. And this is just their day-to-day lives. So this is like an abandoned prison, so it's a little bit more deteriorated, but the cells being next to each other, being stacked like this, is very, very common in prisons. So there is no solitude, there's no quiet, there's no privacy at all. And if you think about the privacy part of things, for those of us who wear hijab, you can only take it off if you are in very certain situations, but the guards are men, and you are visible 24/7. So it's kind of like, do you wear hijab? If you try to wear hijab, how do you wear a hijab? What does that look like for you? It's all very difficult. And it's also a question of, how am I supposed to observe my religious observance when the situation around me doesn't allow for it? And women do ask, am I still obligated to wear hijab? Will I be punished if I don't wear hijab in this situation? This is where people would make wudu. It's all connected to one sort of system. And I don't know if you can see the top. You have to press the water continuously, otherwise it shuts off. So I don't know if you've ever tried to make wudu in one of those airport bathrooms. It is borderline impossible. It's awful. This is a standard hijab in prison. You're able to buy one from commissary. Commissary is basically the prison store. But if you can't afford one, one is not provided to you unless people give you money to purchase it. So Texas prisons don't have air conditioning. I think there's only 2 or 3 prisons that do have air conditioning in Texas. So within the prison, it can get up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Which basically means that if you sit down on any of the metal, which I'm not sure if you guys saw, but the beds are metal. This is metal right here. So people are getting 2nd and 3rd degree burns from sitting down on top of metal. There's no medical care or dental care. You're supposed to have access to it, but if they're short-staffed, they'll say that you have denied going to see the doctor. So I've had clients who've had a hole in the roof of their mouth for months. I've had clients who have had, awful infections for years. We just had somebody in ICE custody die because of a tooth infection. I've had individuals who are, just very awful medical care. There's no outside contact guaranteed to you. If you don't have family that's going to keep in touch with you, you're on your own. I actually visited someone in December, and they informed me that I was their first visitor after 13 years. There's a lack of sanitation, and there's a lack of clothing. And on this point, I want to bring something up, and I hope it's not too graphic, and if it is, somebody can stop me. But in prison, women's uniforms are white. And if they were to have their monthly period and they were to bleed through onto their uniform, they get charged with destruction of state property. But they're not provided feminine care items. They're provided 6 for an entire month. So if they get charged with destruction of state property, that goes on their record. And if they were ever to be released or anything of the sort, they're in debt to the state for ruining that uniform. And this is something that's really common. And it is often humiliating for those women because the guards are men who will make fun of them. And the feminine care products that are donated to them often are taken by female guards. So that is why you see all the donations in the back. We're individually wrapping them, because if they're individually wrapped, they're more likely to be received by the incarcerated women. But if we just hand them a box of shampoo, it'll likely never reach them. So during Ramadan, there's no readily accessible Qurans. If they don't have their iPad, they don't get that physical Quran. And there's no Quranic recitation available to them. So many people die in prison without ever hearing the Quran. I spoke about Tarawih and whether they're permitted to lead Tarawih. It's sometimes, but sometimes not. Meals are not always distributed after sunset. Prisoners are forced to fast for 24 plus hours a day or a week. And many individuals don't get to break their fast. There's no lectures. There's no Jummah. There's no Eid. This specific prison where everything's being donated to, we've been told that if they run out of dates, Ramadan's over. So let's say they have 25 Muslims, a box of 25 dates, that's one day of Ramadan. And then the guard decides Ramadan's over because the dates are over. So we need outreach for these women. And alhamdulillah, this is a little outdated, but we were able to raise enough funds for 25 prayer mats, 25 Qurans, and enough dates to last all of Ramadan, inshallah. And I received word from somebody who's incarcerated in that unit, and they informed me that they did receive all of our donations, and something as simple as a Quran in the month of Ramadan has done a lot for them. So you can get involved using this QR code. We are still seeking donations. We are still seeking a lot of donations. But inshallah, I'm confident that these women will be able to get what they need. We're also just trying to ensure that these women are able to realize that the Muslim community is still there for them, because they started off with over 100 Muslims, and now they have 25. And that's primarily because of the difficulty they've had getting Muslims to interact with the Muslim community there. So yeah.
Jazakallah khair, thank you so much for coming and presenting this. I remember a few weeks back when we had this program, we reflected on one of the verses of the Quran where Allah praises people who feed others and serve others. And one of the sort of surprising elements about that verse is Allah says that وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا, that the believers are those who feed others, and Ramadan is such a month of charity, of feeding people iftar, of being generous, of being charitable. The people that we are taught to feed in this verse, the first two actually kind of make sense. Yatim, the orphan, right? The miskeen, the poor, the destitute. But the last category is people who have been captured, people who actually are like imprisoned. And one of the sort of comments about this ayah is that this third category is mentioned and it doesn't feel like it fits with the rest of the categories. And one of the scholars kind of comments on this and says that's exactly why Allah put it there. Because we as a community tend to forget this demographic. In your experience with meeting them in person, actually going to the prisons, having conversations with them, Could you talk a bit about like their spirits? Like, do they feel abandoned? Do they feel seen? And what is that like?
Yeah. I think specifically in the women's prison, it's harder because I think that we forget that women also are in prison, and the majority of resources go to men in prison. So when I speak to these women, it's both. They're so firm in their faith, but they're still so sad because it's been years since anyone's come to visit them or do a lecture or do a halaqah or recite Quran for them. Group prayer is a huge thing. None of the women want to lead because, Quran is not readily accessible. And so they want someone else to be there to recite the Quran so they can just like absorb it and really enjoy their prayer. So they're both really excited to see people, and they're strong in their faith, but they're so sad. They're really sad because they want that experience.
One thing I learned from you last time is you don't have to be a lawyer, or you don't have to have a special designation with the state or the county to actually just send letters of support.
Yeah.
If you talk about that.
Anybody can send letters of support to the prison. Most churches have a prison outreach community, and it's just a group of people that write letters every single week to incarcerated individuals, just writing them saying, hey, we're here as a church. This was our sermon this week. This is what we're learning. I hope you can find benefit in this. And they have this sort of pen pal relationship. And as a law student or lawyer, we actually ask for those people who've been pen pals with our incarcerated person to write letters of support to the parole board, because we need them to know that there's a community out here that's supporting this person, that's ready to accept this person with open arms. But for our Muslims that are incarcerated, we don't have that same level of, hey, who do we reach out to? Who's supporting you while you're in prison? The answer is usually no one. My parents are no longer with me. I have no one. I don't know what to do. I don't know who's going to write me a letter of support for the parole board. So because of this, systematically, Muslims are less likely to get parole. And so they're serving longer sentences overall. And that's really, really sad to see, because they're serving 25 to life for something like robbing a gas station where no one was killed. But, whereas a Christian prisoner would be released after 25, they're serving more like 50 because we don't have that support for them.
I want to give people the opportunity to ask questions if they want.
It's also 5:32.
Yeah. One final question from me, because I just want to be selfish. I have the mic, and I want to take advantage of this, because every single time we talk about this and I see this presentation, for me it feels like the first time I'm seeing it, like all over again. The emotions all come flooding back. This feeling that we are not doing enough for these members of our community, all of that just comes beyond today's activity, that inshallah after this is over we're going to start making kind of care packages for them. But throughout the year, what are some things you'd recommend that some of us do? We had mentioned sending letters. Is the opportunity to visit some of these people, is that available to us? Yeah,
it is. It is available to us. You would have to be connected to a specific individual. You can't just go in and visit just a group of people unless you're going with a chaplain, which inshallah we are planning for the Austin community soon, inshallah. But you can go and visit people in prison. You are allowed to, if you have been communicating with someone for X amount of time, you just have to be on their visitation list. You don't even have to leave your home to do these things. There's snail mail still, sending it in the post office, but everything's through apps nowadays because these people have tablets. So when I say I've been communicating with someone in prison, that's through my laptop. So you're able to do video visits. You're able to do, it's like sending an email. Those things are all available to us. It's so simple. It literally takes 5-10 minutes to do that outreach, and it means the world for the person on the other end.
Thank you again so much for being
here. Of course.
Really, it's a blessing and honor to kind of
so
partner
kind.
with you on this, and
Of
we
course.
hope this will start a sustained sort of relationship in which we
Inshallah.
can continue the work and continue the advocacy. Inshallah, Sister May will coordinate if there's any questions, and then moving on to the next part of the program, which is really exciting, making the care packages for these people.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Of course, thank you so much, Mufti Anwar. Any questions? I can answer. Like, there's no question that's too like controversial.
So I do have some like exposure to like federal prisons versus states.
Mhm.
So, I know a lot of what we spoke about was primarily like where state prisons are because federal prisons don't get tablets. So unfortunately they don't even have access
Yeah.
to like unless they actually come with the Quran with them.
Mhm.
Can actually advocate for themselves. So that's a really big thing that a lot of people going in
Yeah.
know about. And they're not provided that stuff in obviously commissary like religious items, at least in the federal prison level. So it is a lot more harsher in that setting. So have you had the opportunity to be able to like help communities within
Yes.
Muslim community within the federal?
Yes. I specifically chose to talk about state because there's more like us as a community can do than federal. In the federal system, they do have Qurans in the library, but that's a whole complicated thing. Who gets to go to the library? Who doesn't get to go to the library? Can you check out a book? Why can you check out a book? Why can't you check out a book? How long can you have the book? Who gets to have the book? It's all politics. But the same protections apply in federal prison than as state prison. So they are supposed to get access to those things. They don't, but legally they're supposed to. And I think that, like, inshallah, that's my entire fellowship project after law school, inshallah, is to investigate these things and try to figure out why it is that people in X prison are not receiving things, same things as people in Y prison. Why is that different if we know that religious access is supposed to be uniform across both state, local, and federal facilities?
Thank you.
Of course.
I was just really curious about that, just because I know that there's a huge difference. I don't understand.
I think if I were to get in their minds, it's because federal prisons are quote unquote for more serious crimes. And so in their eyes, it's like, oh, we need to, and this is from like the literature I've read, like their reply briefs and everything, is that we have a vested security interest in protecting the prison. So we are going to limit the exposure these incarcerated individuals have in order to ensure that everyone's safe. That is what I think they're thinking, but in reality, it doesn't make sense.
The other thing is they tend to actually hide a lot of stuff that happens in federal
Yeah.
prisons. Like I've known people who've literally had heart attacks.
Yeah.
And their families don't get to know
Mm-hmm.
that. They are not allowed to have any sort of communication.
No.
So even just things like that where you think that you would have the opportunity to even have family or support. Yes.
There's a man in Houston. He's serving in state prison. He was 17 when he robbed a gas station, and he robbed it with someone else. And that other person shot and killed the gas station attendant. However, because he was with that person, it's almost as if he shot that person in the eyes of the law. And so he was incarcerated. I think he was serving like 80 years or something crazy. And the prison didn't give him his seizure medication. He had epilepsy. He had multiple seizures, and he basically was bedbound for years. But because he was moved from facility to facility to medical care facility to medical care facility, his family couldn't find him for 20 years. And this is a Muslim man, and his family is a wonderful family. And now he is paralyzed from the neck down, and they're basically begging for his release to his family because the prison is saying, like, oh, we want to deter future crime. This man is paralyzed from the neck down. He physically cannot move. He requires round-the-clock care, and his family just wants him back so they can care for him because he's not getting the necessary medical care. But they don't want to. It's really, at the end of the day, prison is just, you're at the will of someone else. And whatever they say goes. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. It doesn't matter what you need. None of that matters. Yeah.
What's like the situation for women that are like pregnant?
Great question. So, women that are pregnant or recently postpartum, they actually are, it depends on the state, it depends on the county, it depends on their crime. They're typically in their own, like, smaller prison. Typically. That's not always. Typically. We actually, in the past 5 years, just as a country, decided that women who are incarcerated while pregnant should no longer be shackled during childbirth. Before that, women's arms and legs were tied to the bed frame while they're giving birth. I can't imagine what that would be like. It's heartbreaking to think about. But now they're not supposed to be shackled, inshallah. But they're not given time to bond with their baby. That baby is born and is maybe given 5-10 minutes with the mom. And that baby is whisked off to whatever foster family or whatever family they do have to care for. The moms very rarely receive postnatal care. It's just really awful. It's really, really awful. They don't get regular status updates about their baby. It might be 5-10 years before they see their baby again. It's really bad. It's really, really awful.
When it comes to sending support, is it possible to send like hijabs and mats and bras?
Yes and no. It depends on the facility, but right now our efforts are for the Gatesville facility, which is an hour and a half outside of Austin. There you can, we did send prayer rugs, we did send Qurans, we did send dates, so you can donate those supplies. Now, to donate those supplies, you need to get in touch with the prison chaplain. That prison chaplain needs to send you a form. On that form, you basically have to give them all of your information. You have to tell them how many of the thing you are sending, the condition, the color, where you got it from, the price, everything. And then you have to, at least for Gatesville, physically drive it over there. Some prisons and jails will allow you to Amazon ship it, and they don't have you fill out all of those forms. My mom's actually a county jail chaplain, and she's just able to like Amazon ship them like hijabs, whatever. Now with hijabs, it's a little bit tricky. It can't be like a scarf. It has to be that like one piece, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like the tube thing, because they don't want it to be misused. There's always a risk of like suicide, or self-harm. So you are able to, send it to their, like, put money in their account so they can buy it, but you can't put money on someone's book who you don't know. It's not like you have to have that pre-existing relationship with that person to put money on their account so they can buy something. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, what
Yeah, that's a great question. Education is a huge thing. So churches actually, they do Bible studies either via the mail or they'll have someone go every single Sunday to do that Bible study with them. Dream world, I wish we could do something very similar. I mean, like, imagine someone who is incarcerated learning the story of Prophet Musa. Like, I can't imagine what that would be like for them. Yeah. So dream world, it would be that they are able to get, this sort of religious counseling that they need. I also think that if they're able to have like a monthly halakha, that would be like revolutionary for them. They used to, but the chaplain at this specific prison, made it very difficult for the person who was coming to enter and get access and schedule. She would cut it short. It was just like really, really awful. And the person who did it just couldn't put up with it anymore, unfortunately. So I'd love for them to have like a halakha. I mean, even if, and again, you don't have to have some official title. All you really need is like perseverance and the ability to really be annoying and follow up via email. And you can get a lot done that way. Any other question about prison conditions generally? Yeah.
So how do you establish those avenues of connection? So it seems like you can't just, like, you can be on the outside being like, oh, we have this and we want to get, and then obviously, like, what are your main obstacles, and, like, how do you get around those?
Yeah. So I think for, like, the general community, you kind of need to know someone on the inside. For me, it was a little bit easier because I actually worked in legislative advocacy for 4 years before law school. So a lot of the organizations that I worked with, we still keep in touch, and I guess I'm just like the only Muslim they know. So I get emails a lot being like, hey, there's somebody in prison who's Muslim and they're having this issue. Can you send an email? Can I give them your contact information? And that's how I set up those relationships. But I think like for people who just want to get involved, you do need like some sort of connecting relationship. I actually just met someone who was recently incarcerated, who's now, who was released, and we were talking and he was saying that like he wants to connect more Muslims that are not in prison to incarcerated Muslims. So inshallah, like if you scan that QR code, inshallah we can connect people with other people. And then I guess like we can go over this later, but like there are certain things that I think we forget about. Like simple things like being able to like have fresh air, being able to hear the Quran. When I was at a prison visit in December, and the person I was speaking to was just so excited to tell me that they managed to memorize Surah Fatiha, and they did an incredible job. But it's just like simple things like that. Like they want to show somebody like what they've accomplished, especially if they don't have any family, or especially if they're like the only Muslim in their facility. But yeah, I would say scan the QR code. Inshallah, like we're starting this group here in Austin so we can have more regular visits in both male and female prisons. But yeah, anything else? Burning questions about prison, jails? Yeah.
What does it look like for a Muslim coming out of prison?
That's hard. The majority of halfway houses, do you guys know what a halfway house is? It's like between prison and being released, like while you're on supervision. I don't know what they call it in Texas and New York. It's like increased supervision, something. But those halfway houses are usually run by a church ministry. So for Muslims, I mean, it's not a huge deal for them to live there, but there are certain things that can make them feel alienated, like that, like brotherly or sisterly sort of like relationship they have with each other, going to church every Sunday, doing Bible studies together. So that can be difficult for them. It also depends whether you're being released from federal, state, or state prison, or you're being released from jail. Those all look very different. But the thing that they all share is that it's all very difficult. You often are given clothes that you came in with. That's usually for jail. For prison, you get like random clothes. Some prisons will give you a bus pass to like wherever, and you usually have no money. Some prisons will give you $20. I don't know if that's Texas or New York. They'll give you like $20-$30 to figure out what to do with. And you're kind of left on your own. States are now trying to do more re-entry work to get people to have a job post-prison. They do a lot of like technical school stuff in prison. But the problem is that if you do not have a parole date set up, if you do not on your account, it says that your sentence will be reviewed on X date, you are not given access to education because they see you as a lost cause, even though you may be released 2 months from now. Because it doesn't say so on your account, you're not given access to education. Someone I just visited in prison, they really want to get their associate's degree while they're incarcerated, but they don't have a release date in sight, so the prison denied their access to education. So now if they are released in, let's say, 2-3 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, like 9 months, what are they going to do? They're not given access to education, so they're just kind of left to their own devices. Should we start the basket making? Okay, so I'm going to explain it. We've got 3 separate stations. Each person, well, first, all the shampoos need to be taped, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then each bag gets 1 shampoo, 1 soap, 1 toothpaste. Now, just a little bit of context, the reason that we're giving them these specific things is because if you can't afford these things in prison, these things are not provided to you always. The prison's eligible for donations every 6 months. They do have like a quote unquote charity account where they can give like X amount of supplies to and from, but that's also very much dependent on the warden, the guards, all of that. So, we made these little assembly lines. Let's get started with taping, and then we'll start on actually putting them together. And they're a little difficult to tie, so I'll show you how to tie them.